So I named my talk Government.js, but it won't be political, so don't fall asleep or leave. You can fall asleep because it's super comfy in here, but that being said, hopefully I can challenge your perceptions of what a political party can look like. And if you want to, there's a lot of links in this talk, so the slides are online for clicky stuff, because I might move past the slide before you have time to click on things. So you can go to the GitHubs to see the slides. So last year, or about 2 years ago, I quit my job. I was working at a market research company, and it was kind of how you would expect working in a market research company would be, not the most exciting place in the world. And I got offered to go and move to the Bay Area and work for this place called Code for America. I'm from America. My affiliation with that country is that I was born in it, and it's an OK place. However, I was given the opportunity to go work with the city of Boston through this program. And Code for America, basically the way it works, it's like Peace Corps, but for nerds, and you work with cities. So the idea is you put these people who would never be hired by a city government into city government somehow, and they do crazy things for a year, and it's a fellowship, so you get to kind of dink around and try to do something interesting. And so this is one of my favorite photos of me, because the entire time I was there, I was told I was supposed to wear a tie, but nobody really knew that I wasn't, because I could hide it pretty well. And the mayor of Boston, he's in his 5th term now, Thomas M. Menino. He's such an awesome guy. He is just a really funny character, and this is us in City Hall, and it was a great time. I heard later that people would, there was this murmur throughout City Hall that, have you guys seen the bearded guy in the elevator yet? This is crazy. So within the first couple days, the idea of culture change, the whole point of Code for America is to introduce culture change. It's to introduce modern technology, but also culture change into a city. And I think it was working, through my beard virus or whatever. We also got featured in Governing magazine, a prestigious publication. And 2 of the guys that work at Boston City Hall, Chris and Nigel, they do an amazing job of they're like an innovation department inside of the mayor's office. It's a 2-man department, and they basically just try to do the coolest things that they could possibly do to make the modern government a reality. So they got quite a lot of recognition, and their department's growing now. So what I was basically doing was trying to go inside the government and work with it and fix it, and that's one class of strategies that I want to talk about. And I have a lot of examples. So where I worked, it's now, almost 2 years old. I think it's 1 year, 8 months old. They have 275 GitHub repos. Everything that the organization does is open source. There's too many projects to keep track of, frankly. So what I've done is curated a list of the ones that have worked particularly well. But if you want to check out what Code for America produces, you can go to their GitHub. But let me just go through in as fast process as I can some of the examples so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. And their motto is all open all the time. So you can totally talk to the people who write the projects, fork it, get involved. What they really, really, really want is, if you live in a city, to take one of their projects and set it up in your city and implement a solution that somebody else built, but get it into your civic context wherever you live. So this is called Route View. Let me refresh. And Route View is in Honolulu. It's a smartphone app that you put in routing. Like in Honolulu, if you go from Honolulu to Waipahu, it shows you a route. And then along the way, it shows any government-owned cameras, and it can give you traffic conditions from your smartphone instead of having to go to some horrible government website. Blight status is in New Orleans. You put in a property that's blighted, which basically just means abandoned or old or dirty. There's a lot of that in New Orleans after the hurricane. And you can have this beautiful UI that shows you the status of that property instead of having to go and search through records in a basement of a city building somewhere. And this makes it really easy to figure out, hey, this is kind of the timeline of this property, and here's when it's going to get fixed, or it's not going to get fixed, or it was too cost prohibitive. We have Honolulu Answers, which is basically Ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves? It was the dream of the 90s, and you could simplify computers by doing human-style question asking. Turns out doing that for the whole internet is kind of crazy, but doing it just for one city government website is super awesome and a huge UX win. So Honolulu Answers, you do things like, you type in a box, how do I renew my driver's license? And you get back, kind of Stack Overflow style, a bunch of other people that have asked the same question, and then an actual workflow for how to figure out who do I call, what do I do, what form do I fill out. So it simplifies interactions with government. I should also mention that everything in this particular set of demos were all Code for America projects in the last year or two. Preparedly is for disaster prevention. You can basically sign up. I think it's in Austin, Texas. You can sign up your property, and anytime that there's like a fire in the property, or maybe a hurricane or tornado, you get a text message alert and other things. You get emails that help you prepare for natural disasters. It's super important. We have NeighborHow, which is like a wiki for doing things in your neighborhood and kind of citizen-driven, like tactical urban activism. It's kind of crazy. It's like a wiki for how to go crazy and put a bunch of bike racks inside of parking spaces. And it's in a bunch of different communities now. Local data is like a mapping toolkit so that you can allow people to crowdsource data really easily. Because every app that crowdsources data writes everything from scratch, and it doesn't work on certain phones, or it makes a bunch of trade-offs. Local data is trying to make it really easy to have like a toolkit for just having citizens report problems on their phone about a place, which is a ubiquitous problem in government hacking. Texasin is cool. It's like you put up banners on bus stops or anywhere that people can see a phone number in a city, and you can give them like a question, like, what would you think of a new subway line coming along this road? Text your answer here. So it's like a lightweight text message survey tool that's easy enough for city officials to use. This is one that I worked on last year, Discover BPS. It's like, I like to think of it as like Airbnb, but for parents to find schools for their kids. So Boston has this insane list of requirements that's like a 27-page PDF. And it basically is way too much information for all parents in Boston to read. It talks about you have to live in this neighborhood within a certain radius of this school to go to this one, and if you went to this school last year, you can't go to this school over here, and this school has this after-school programs, but you have to qualify with blah, 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 blah. So we made it into like a web app that's really easy to use, and it's being used by the school district now. This is another one that I worked on, which is real-time bus data. I will fight the nature gods. They're trying to stop these ideas from being spread. It's basically like there was a big snowstorm in Boston the week that I got there, February 2010 or 2011, and some of the school buses got to the schools at like 11 p.m. at night. They left at 4 p.m. and they got home at 11 p.m. because there was so much snow on the freeways that the school buses were just stuck in traffic for like 6 hours. And parents were calling like crazy, where are my kids? And it was 11 p.m. when they finally got home. So we made this app so that parents could log in with their school account and actually see where the bus is on a smartphone. Who can not hear me? Everybody can hear me? All right, I can put the mic closer to my mouth. This is awesome. We're going to bring it down. There are new, this is actually powered by JavaScript. There's this company, Mapbox, that does tile rendering in a streaming fashion. And so my girlfriend, Jessica, actually works at Code for America this year, and she made this map of the city of Macon, Georgia's transit infrastructure. And she styled it, made it modern, made it work on mobile smartphone browsers, and then the city actually upstreamed it and embedded it in their website. And previously, they had a Flash applet that lets you zoom into a PDF. Oh, God. Let me save the venue really quick. I'm just going to keep rolling with it. Here's a budget visualization toolkit called cPennyWork. And the cool thing about this is that it's super simple. So city employees are overworked, and they don't have time to learn web frameworks. So what you do is you sign up for a free WordPress account and a Google Doc. You put your budget spreadsheet into the Google Doc and plug the Google Doc ID into the WordPress site, and you get this. It's like a budget toolkit. So it's being used in the city of Macon, Georgia, to visualize to the public a bond referendum. Basically, people take another penny off of every purchase, and they fund parks, and they fund new rail lines going in. But people never actually understand how the government uses their money. So this is a way that's super lightweight that city employees can sign up for in like 10 minutes and start having open budgeting. And here's the penny tax in Georgia implementation site. And then this is awesome. In Honolulu, you can adopt a siren for tsunamis. Because there's all these sirens, but there are things like, I think they had iguanas that would start living in the sirens, and the sirens would malfunction. So neighbors that lived around the sirens can adopt the sirens, and it's their job. They get to anthropomorphize them. So this guy named his siren Vernon K. Badua, after his own name, Vernon Badua. He named the siren after himself. Some sirens have different names. But now he'll get text messages that say, hey, have you checked the siren this month? Like, it might be screwed up. And this app was actually adopted in Boston. We built a thing called Adopt a Fire Hydrant. And Adopt a Fire Hydrant was the same exact idea, but you're supposed to shovel the fire hydrant out after a snowstorm. But this guy in Honolulu set it up. C-Click Fix is a ubiquitous thing now. It's in a lot of cities. It's not a Code for America project, but it inspired some Code for America projects. It lets you report like potholes from your smartphone. In the city, when they fix them, you get a push notification that says, hey, they fixed that pothole you reported last month. So based on that, we made a dashboard of all open 311 requests across many cities, so you can see which cities are fixing more requests. There's like text message interfaces for cities to use to report new things. This one's kind of like a video game. Mayor Emanuel in Chicago, this is like a video game version of the mayor running around the city fixing potholes. And it shows like how the city's actually responding to triaging these civic infrastructure issues. And 311 Labs, which is like kind of like starting to convene a community of people trying to make cities more efficient in the way that they spend money on fixing the infrastructure. So that's fixing government from the inside. There's also groups fixing government from the outside, such as here. Hi, Malta.
Yeah. A short interruption. When the talk is over, you all have to stay here.
If we're stuck, or else the place will blow away, so don't get up. Yeah, I have a captive audience? Is that what you're telling me? Let's talk about anarchy. I already am, you just don't realize it. So this is actually a group in Germany, in Berlin. They don't have the word civic in German, so they're using Stadtland, which I think is city and state. And it's basically like civic coding. And what they're trying to do is, without working directly with the governments, just from a community activism standpoint, do the same exact kind of things. So they have this app, Wheelmap, which is for crowdsourcing wheelchair accessible places. There's this one, which is awesome, which if I Google Translate made me understand, it's basically if you have a bunch of bottles and cans, you can find people that come by and collect bottles and cans in carts, shopping carts or however, and you get their text message number, and you can tell them, hey, I'm going to leave my bottles and cans out next Tuesday. Come by my house on the curb. They'll be there. Super awesome. This one is basically if you request information from the government, instead of just taking it, you can post it here, and then everybody else can get it, so you don't have to have two people requesting the same thing from the government. And then they also have an open 311 style system that was in the UK for like the last 10 years. This Fix My Street has been like, it was like the original 311 implementation. And this is my favorite project. This guy, Stefan, put all of Germany's laws on GitHub in Markdown. Amazing. So for instance, this is the actual law of the German government. And then now the Pirate Party in Germany has been sending pull requests. And so they're changing the law. And imagine how mind-blowing it would be if any city employee merged it. It's just like, it gets me so excited. So the third strategy is kind of a hybrid of the first two. You have inside and outside government. And then Tim O'Reilly, who I worked indirectly through him, he's behind Code for America. He wrote this awesome essay. There's a link in the presentation called Government as a Platform. So that's the hybrid strategy. I think it's the most promising one. And it's this idea of a civic startup. And the word startup could have positive or negative connotations, but in this case, it means fixing something. So what is a civic startup? Here's an example. From Vancouver, Canada, this guy, Luke, made this thing that was originally called Van Trash, but he changed it recollect.net. And it's a funny pun if you think about it. So in Vancouver, every time there's a holiday, the garbage day switches to the next day. So it might be Tuesday, 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 and then there's a holiday, and now garbage is on Wednesday, 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 and then there's a holiday. So you can't recollect the time of the trash pickup, so he just made a thing where you put in where you live, and you put in your number, and it text messages you every time trash day changes, so you don't forget to take out your trash. Super simple. Also, something that's super simple to a web developer, but something that cities are not going to be able to have time to implement. So what he did is he figured out he could sell that service to the government, City of Vancouver, and the City of Vancouver would pay him for every citizen that signed up, cover his costs, allow him to make some money, and also allow the government to meet, it's a win-win-win situation. So this is a lot of the software that still runs in government. This is the assessor real estate system in New Orleans. I actually personally like this aesthetic. I think it's rad that they're rolling with it, but it's sad that a lot of government software is still looking like this today. So I want to propose, there's many ways to hack this system. Here's one that I've kind of gone deep with. So right now, the way government buys software is you have salespeople that go into City Hall. I witnessed this when I worked in Boston City Hall. It was kind of disgusting. There's these salespeople that get real chummy, and they say, you know, our enterprise platform added a new, let's say, like a student information system to its product lineup this year. And so the school district is like, OK, we'll spend $1 million on that. And it takes 3 years to install, and then it's there for 10 years or 20 years, and they're stuck with it. And they go through this process where they have all the salespeople from all the big enterprise companies come in and say, are we going to give you $1 million or you $1 million? Like, we'll have you battle for 3 years. And they finally pick one. It's horrible. They are making the biggest like vertical stack purchases possible, and then they're running our entire government infrastructure and using our tax dollars to, like, it's crazy. So what if we had low-cost procurement? What if governments could, like, try something out and then turn it off, just like how we buy, I don't know, service as a software on the web today? And because it's such low amounts of money, you don't need a competitive process because cities can, like any city employee, like a CIO or a CTO or whatever, they can bust out like 50 grand on something without having to go through a competitive bidding process. So there's a pretty high margin in terms of money, like a window that we can start inserting these more like tech-based solutions into government and getting them to adopt them. So to get even more idealistic, what if, this is such a crazy idea I've been dreaming about for a while, what if we had government as an OAuth provider? So identity platforms inside of government, you go to a website, maybe Mary here writes an app called registeranewbusiness.com. And I go there, and it's like, sign in with your City of Berlin account. And it OAuths you through the City of Berlin site. And now I can interact with Mary's site and click a button that makes me fill out a form about how to do a new business. And then I click a button, and it submits it to the city's API. That way, a web developer who knows what she's doing can make the UI. Citizens can use it, and the government gets better new business applications. And there's a ton of use cases where this would be a more optimal system. It also sounds a lot like developer ecosystems and what has made these companies really successful, but nobody's done it for government yet. So it's kind of like, I wish procurement officers had Heroku add-ons, basically. This is a dream of mine. So you can go and you can click a button, you can get Redis on your Heroku thing, and money will start coming out of your account. But if 3 months down the road you're like, oh, I want to switch to that other one, you can switch, and money stops coming and going to Redis to go. It'll go to the other guys or whatever. And there's all these add-ons, and there's different levels, and they're plug and play, and they conform to like a third-party ecosystem standard. But again, nobody is doing it in government because government is dominated by these big enterprise companies. Here's an example of an actual place that is doing this right. Freaking Estonia is awesome. So why Estonia? I went to this crazy meeting with the president of Estonia. Don't ask me how I got there. That's me, and that's the president of Estonia. He's an amazing person. He told me that he learned a program on a PDP-8 when he was in middle school, and that has formed, and he's basically a hacker. And so he is like, he writes assembler, and he is now a head of state. Like, how many heads of state can write assembler? I think like one. And what it's done is it's informed, like he has a native understanding of data and privacy and all these important issues that governments have to tackle. And Estonia actually has these really cool things. So each department in the government has its own compartmentalized data storage mechanism for doing whatever digital innovation they have to do. And only that department can access it. And the citizens are in charge of picking which departments get access to which parts of their data. It's not one creepy big government data set. And it wouldn't work at, say, the United States federal level. But they have ribs and spines. So we have the backbone, the spine, the standards, and each department has a rib that connects to the spine in a standardized way. But the cool thing is that they just bought that software because they said, here's what we need, what company is going to make it? And they bought this platform and integrated it, but they don't run their company like a software, or they're not a software company. Estonia is a small government that has made smart purchases and innovated because they have the right platform in place. So you can do things like when you park your car, you text message what neighborhood you parked in, and when the person who comes by and checks your license plate, they see that you're currently paying for parking. And you can pay, you can vote online. You can vote in any election in Estonia online. They're the only country where every election you can vote online. They rank really highly in a lot of different areas. But they're not, it's better to think of them as a medium-sized city when we're talking about adapting their ideas for other places. There are only about 1 million people in Estonia. But there's 1 million people in a lot of cities that have very similar issues. So another problem, who's going to advocate for this good software? We know that there's better ways of doing it than what government is doing. And bureaucrats are evil, right? So who is going to be our champion? MC Hammer. That's who. You guys remember MC Hammer? He's kind of a big deal. He is actually from the neighborhood that I now live in Oakland. And this is at Code for America last week, or actually like 3 days ago. Ron Conway's a well-known investor, and Tim O'Reilly brought MC Hammer in to talk about laying it down in government and getting them to be more efficient. This is kind of a joke slide, but this is basically representing that this issue is getting bigger and bigger. People like MC Hammer are starting to pay attention to it. So you know it's a big deal. And we all know that government is going to always change slowly, but government technology is actually moving really fast. For instance, in Boston, they have this CIO that came in 2007, and he was able to quintuple the tech budget. They went from using $5 million every year to run their technology to $25 million. So he made technology a bigger deal. They spent more money on technology, but what they did was it made the internal systems operations more efficient, and they actually saved about $250 million overall in the budget by better leveraging technology. The federal government in the United States spent something like 200 times the entire net amount of iPhone apps that are purchased. The government bought 200 times that last year in just big enterprise software. But technology is making big leaps and bounds even in government. And why am I talking at JSConf? JS is everywhere. And it's the fastest growing thing right now. It's ubiquitous. And if you're going to build an app that fixes government, all of the examples that I showed earlier, they're going to have a JS component. And our community has this history in the last few years of kind of moving forward at the most efficient route possible and not worrying about legacy compatibility. So there's no way that we can change all governments overnight, but we can define how it looks to fix government in the future. And the most important thing is there are cities that are interested in this. At that meeting with the president of Estonia, we were supposed to come up with policy ideas on how to actually hack the system and fix government. And I proposed this lightweight procurement idea. And I had 15 cities express interest and say, hey, we're super interested in this. Code for America has worked with like 30 cities so far in the last couple of years. They just announced the cities for next year, and they include San Francisco and Oakland. And they've worked with like Chicago and some of the other bigger cities that are doing a lot of interesting stuff. There are people that are being hired as chief data officers now. So Philadelphia just hired a guy who used to work at Code for America to be in the cabinet in the city as CDO. And it's a totally awesome new role because it's his job to just make sure that all the data the government's collecting can be interacted with citizens. So my pitch to everybody is whatever government you live in, find a bug, figure out how to fix it, fix that in a way that does it better than how the government is attempting to fix it now, turn it into a product, and there's now this interesting early adopter network of cities who are going to adopt it and potentially pay you to fix the problems that they're not capable of fixing because government shouldn't run like software companies. So I think of the Node community as a political party in a way. It's very self-directed. People do what's fun or people do what's interesting. And we have these lightweight rules around the core of the community. They're very small, but people are moving forward very fast. And what I'd like to see with government hacking and the JavaScript community is people pick different parts that are a little bit tarnished, and they find a way to polish them, and they're implementing small things incrementally. And that's kind of like how JavaScript has evolved over the last few years. We have a completely horribly ugly system, but we've been able to make a lot of beautiful abstractions inside of it, or just see it for what it really is as a kind of a beautiful core. So like government, the good parts. So thank you, everybody. This is Isaac Schluter's cat, Aristotle, from the Node project, just so you wanted to know. I have 4 minutes for questions, if anybody has questions. I'm glad we didn't die, also. Do we have a mic for questions? I don't even know. Maybe. Well, I'll just repeat it.
So one of the first things that you stated was that there are a lot of projects and it's hard to find them. And then you said you wanted to get governments to adopt them. I'll restate it. So first, there's many projects, so it's hard to find them. But you're trying to get governments to adopt them and to be able to switch easily between them. And it seems like discovery is a real issue here. How can we fix that? How can we make it easier to find what the government needs or have them find it for themselves?
I think one of the things I learned in working for one city and then going into another city and trying to adapt the same solutions was that every city is different. And it's hard to write a virus that infects multiple cities. Like, you come up with one cool thing, but one city might think it's cool and another city might not. So you kind of have to, it's all about more people in more cities getting involved in telling the story of their individual city and what they need. And what I'd like to see is more like local developers working in the cities they live in with the cities themselves. I think right now it's only a couple years of people really tinkering with this stuff. And more and more solutions like the Adopt-A system, Adopt-A-Hydrant, Adopt-A-Siren, that's been adopted by like 15 cities now. And that's one of the cooler success stories of like in the last 12 months since it started. But it's still the early days, and I think that it's hard to find universal solutions. It's more like you have one, like the van trash thing. How many cities have weird trash schedules? A lot of cities don't have that problem. So it's complicated, but I think it's getting better. Mary. Oh, yeah.
I'm interested in why the things you've described are predicated on the involvement of government. So the overarching theme seems to be making the world run better. But why is the government the sort of nexus of all of those solutions?
I think that government is so hard to understand right now that on one hand, I appreciate the idea of building a completely new system that's not connected. And maybe like rage quitting on government, and you can do a lot if you're not trying to backport everything. But I guess that's a really good question. I think that may be like the core debate is, do you try to fix something that's hard to understand? Because what if we could like know, what if we could know what our government's doing at all times in a way that's not creepy transparency but positive understandability? Like if we could truly understand the system and all collaborate and actually do it together, which is the dream of government, if everybody doing everything together, then that would be great. So I guess at a meta level, I would be happy with these systems working in society without the government's involvement. But if you did build a system that did work, it might turn into a government eventually anyway. So it might be inevitable. It's a difficult question. And with that, I am totes out of time. And apparently, don't stand up until Paul tells us to.